Hey, how's it going? So I'm going to talk about deeper reading 3, 4, and 6 chapters. These are super long chapters, so I'm going to try to condense this in so you don't have to sit here and watch me for too long, assuming you do. But like I said, these videos are just supplemental. I put the notes in the forums, and I wait for your comments in the forums also. And you can incorporate these things into the reflections if you find that's helpful. So focusing on the reader, chapter 3. Why cold reading is often a bad idea. Yeah, he gives that example about the how to fold laundry, but doesn't say what it's for. This example was in Guiding Readers and Writers. I think this was also in that book, the exact same example. There's 3 types of prior knowledge that are considered especially important for students as they read content area texts. And this is interesting, on page 27. Knowledge about the topic, knowledge about the structure, and knowledge about the vocabulary. So this is why you need a lot of pre-reading techniques. This seems to be geared towards a lot of different levels you can work with here. You need to make connections with past experiences. Sound familiar? We've seen this from the previous classes. So the whole idea here is the idea of preparation. Don't just throw a text and say, hey, let's take a look at this. You got to work with, getting people ready for it. You got to get the attitude ready. Sometimes people's attitudes when they dive into things are great, but how a person feels is going to affect what they're doing. They must see the relevance in the assignment. What is it in it for me, like they say on page 29. There's an interesting example here on page 30 with the bookstore where he says, if you drop you off in a bookstore, someone drops you off in a bookstore, gives you $20, say, I'll be back in 15 minutes to pick you up. You have an idea about where you're going because your past experiences about what subjects you like, what books you like, what authors you like, maybe even if it's something that you're starting to understand about or you have an interest in. The 2 things that are going to guide you are your experience of what you like and your interest in learning more about it. Which are not necessarily related. So that's a nice example here. He talks here about 6 degrees of reading, which is interesting, but don't have time to hit that. On page 36, there's a nice suggestion here. Carol Jago in Classics in the Classroom, and he mentions this on page 36 in the bottom, suggests we choose books that. There's a nice list down there you should take a look at, And what's really interesting about this is, people's experiences are never the same in the same book, and that can even be the same person on a different chronotopical, point in their life, in different place or space or time. I guess place and space are the same, but if you read a book at age 15 and again at age 30 and again at age 60, you'll see the book in different ways. I did this with The Three Musketeers, one of my favorite books. And that's pointed out on page 37. So framing activities to use before reading a major work. Here we go. Here's the practical stuff, page 38. He's got he's got a list of genres here on page 39. He's got other things that were previously mentioned in other texts here about anticipation guides on page 39. This was covered in the reading from last class, so I'm not going to get into that too much. Focus poems, that sounds kind of interesting. On page 45, I particularly like this. Additional ways to pre-read, apart from what he suggests here. Read. Oh, sorry, bounce back, page 43. KWLR charts, so do a little bit of research about it. That's an interesting focus there, a takeoff of the KWL. But anyways, these points on page 45 are interesting because they're related to story, articles of warm-up, role-play, game share, current event. So you have to spark some sort of interest in there. What could you do with that, Framing activities to use while reading a major work. Now, this is also cool because these framing activities are good because they provide a structure so the students can continue with their interest or continue understanding what's going on with the text. Daily focus questions on page 46. I call this DRI. I think I might have mentioned this before. Describe, react, integrate. It's a fact, something from the text, an opinion, and an expansion question, or an expansion. Well, you could do it either way because sometimes I have the students write a textual, an opinion, and an expansion question about something. And then these are rotated or written on the board, and they're used as discussion-based. Word game, interrupted summary. These are the ones that are also led off of those. Now, on page 51 on chapter 4, for first draft reading. It's talking about getting the students in the right environment in order for them to read, On page 52, on the bottom, have I chosen a good place to read? Have I set enough time to read this? Have I cleared my mind of other obstacles? No? And the whole idea with this about reading a book is like, also when I was a student, they used to give us like a couple different times. I read this book 3 times. I'm like, I think one's enough. But you read it once, get the first draft reading. What's the point of a first draft reading? Well, it's the point to get down, as he says here on page 53, the characters, recognizing plot points, getting used to the language and structure of the novel. That's part of the orientation there, even if it's skimmed. But having that background, once again, there's a great experience here on page 54 when he talks about the mall. Now, if I go to the mall, and I've done this too, I actually do it every year. Actually, I stop buying Christmas presents. Just kidding. But when you have to buy Christmas presents, like it's a couple days before Christmas, I get some money together, get some cash, go to the mall. I got to buy some people some things. Totally stressed out. Got a list of random people in my head. I don't even know where I'm going. And he uses the same thing here on page 54, but with a little bit of preparation, which we don't all have, or also which are called implementation intentions. That's something I remember from before. Implementation intentions. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? Where do you want to go in the mall? Or you could just skip it and order stuff from Amazon. Anyways, couple of activities here. Turning headings or titles into questions prior to reading, page 57. Focus groups, bam, very good. Which one do I like the best? I like the one on focus groups. Each group has a different thing to focus on. What was that thing I was looking for? Let's see. It'll come up soon. So the idea of embracing confusion. Learning begins when we encounter confusion. Very true. Very true. An interesting list also. When students don't understand the reading, they usually mean one of the following things. Page 64. There's a list of 5 bullets there. You should take a look at that. That's kind of interesting also. Let's see here. You can do some color coding. There's a lot of different activities here. Teaching content in the classroom, etc. Okay, let's jump to chapter 6, please. So, here we go. Oh, great. Collaboration. This is the thing I was thinking of. Page 104, chapter 6. Everyone comes to the printed page with a different prior knowledge and experience. I mentioned this. It's been mentioned in other books. But students need to make that connection. A lot of these points are repeated. Putting students in groups. If you let them form their own groups, probably not a good idea. They'll move to the same, ethnic groups or gender groups or other types of groups. So, you want to put them in groups. How do you do that? I count off. I'll say, okay, if there's 30 people in the class, count off to 15. Okay, good. Number 1s, you guys get together. Number 2s, you guys get together, etc. Or, if you, like he suggests here, if they're not working in pairs, groups of 3, so you count off to 10. So all the 1s over there, you got 3 people, etc. Yeah, and he explains all this. What type of you should assign each person, like in a group of 3 or 4 or 5, a specific role. My favorite one is on page 111, the role of facilitator, recorder, and reporter. When I taught at the Extension School in Cambridge, this is what we did all the time, even us as teachers. When we would go to our orientation as the faculty, I worked there part-time for 10 years in the summers. But, our boss, or the director of the program, would make us do the same activities that she wants us to do with our students. So that's the best way to do it. And we had, in each group, as teachers, we had our, recorder, we had our, reporter, a recorder, and, sorry, I don't remember the third one here. The facilitator, the person that has to make sure everything's going smooth. 10 strategies on page 114 to promote higher level thinking in small groups. Some good activities. Page 114, silent exchange. Simple activity, but a good one. There's some in here that I don't particularly like. Page 116, I really like that one. SOAPs. SOAPS. Subject, occasion, audience, purpose, and speaker. That's one way you can break it up if you have groups of 5. Mystery envelopes. That's another one that I like there. There's a whole bunch of ones he talks about here. So these 3 chapters have a lot to do. That's a long video, 10 minutes almost. Sorry. But these chapters have a lot to do here with reading and particular strategies you can look for. A lot of stuff overlaps with the other books. So, when we look at these, what a lot of different books say, it's definitely best practices here. Or best observations even. Take it easy.